From university campuses around the world to YouTube, free speech is under furious attack. I feel this trend of intellectual fascism is horrifying, and I am in complete agreement with the thoughts of John Stuart Mill when he stated, "We can never be sure that the opinion we are endeavoring to stifle is a false opinion, and even if we are sure, stifling it would be an evil still." In this video, however, I want to come at this from a different angle and demonstrate to the opponents of free speech that their attempts to stifle the free flow of ideas is actually working against them. When speech or ideas are throttled, it doesn't make those ideas go away. In fact, it makes them seem more valuable and more alluring. It is in this way that the opponents of free speech are actually helping to make those ideas they oppose stronger. This thought came to me after I finished reading Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, A Psychology of Persuasion. Throughout his book, Cialdini drives home the point that none of us are logical as we think we are. We are so surrounded by information that all of us take intellectual shortcuts based on limited data. It is an evolutionary necessity. If we tried to think everything through logically based on all of the available data, we literally wouldn't get anything done. Out of the 6 principles of persuasion that Cialdini discusses, the one that relates to how counterproductive thought policing can be is related to the principle of scarcity. Cialdini observes that we place a higher value on items that we perceive as being scarce. So, for example, if I come to your office with a jar full of cookies, you may decide not to take one. However, if I come back to you and show you that there are only 2 cookies left, as everyone else in the building loves my cookies, you will now value my 2 remaining cookies much higher and will likely take one. This is actually a persuasion double whammy, as on the one hand, you have seen the limited supply of cookies become depleted, and on the other hand, you know that there is a demand for the remaining 2. Another example of the power of scarcity that Cialdini tells that I, as a movie buff, particularly enjoyed, was the case of the 1972 disaster movie The Poseidon Adventure. It is hard to imagine now, but in those days networks would pay large sums of money to be able to secure first-run broadcast rights for movies. What was different about The Poseidon Adventure, however, was that its producer, the flamboyant Irwin R. Allen, decided to hold an auction between the big 3 networks at the same time for the rights. When the auction started, the scarcity principle kicked in, and the bidding went higher than anyone planned. And why wouldn't it? After all, there's only one Poseidon Adventure, right? Barry Diller of ABC wound up winning the auction for the then unheard of price of $3.3 million. This was more than $1.3 million higher than the previous high of $2 million that was paid for the movie Patton. The bidding was so high that ABC themselves figured they would lose $1 million on the deal. When the dust settled, an embarrassed Diller stated, "ABC has decided, regarding its policy for the future, they would never again enter into an auction situation." Whether it's office cookies or blockbuster movies, the scarcity principle can play a huge role in our perceptions of value. What is interesting, though, is that the scarcity principle not only applies to things, but to speech and ideas as well. This was demonstrated in an experiment in which a court case was set up in which a man was at fault in an automobile accident. How much should the man have to pay? If the jury deciding the case knew that the guilty man didn't have insurance, they fined him $3,000. If, on the other hand, they were told he did have insurance, they fined him $4,000. Here's the interesting part, though. In the instance where it was mentioned that the guilty party had insurance, and then the judge ruled that information inadmissible and to disregard it, the jury awarded the plaintiff $4,800. In effect, when the information concerning the insurance was taken away, it became more valuable to the jury and they attached more importance to it. To anyone with a little appreciation of history, this should come as no surprise. During the 80s and 90s, it wasn't the repressive left trying to restrict free speech, it was the Christian right. How did it work out for them? Did banning books or songs they didn't approve of work? If you knew of an album which Tipper Gore didn't approve of, would that knowledge make you more or less likely to get that album? The lesson is clear. When you try and restrict something, it becomes more valuable to people and they are more likely to seek it out and believe it. In the long term, restricting free speech does not help your side. In fact, it is more likely to drive people into the opposing camp. One of the most striking examples of this is the rise of Hitler during the Weimar Republic. In order to suppress the Nazis, the Weimar Republic passed a host of anti-hate speech laws designed to stifle Hitler. Hitler used this to his advantage, constantly arguing the point that only one man has his speech banned in Europe. Aren't you curious what he has to say? When he finally became Chancellor, he turned the laws that had been used to silence him against his political opponents. Otto Wels, the Social Democratic Party chairman, stood up in the Reichstag to condemn Hitler's suspension of civil liberties. Hitler was able to embarrass and shut him down by quoting a line from the poet Friedrich Schiller. "Late you come, but still you come." Hitler continued, "You should have recognized the value of criticism during the years we were in opposition, when our press was forbidden, our meetings were forbidden, and we were forbidden to speak for years on end." By trying to restrict the speech of Hitler, the supporters of Weimar only increased the power and allure of his ideas until it was too late. It is a lesson of history the opponents of free speech would be wise to consider.